My mother and I lived our whole lives from paycheck to paycheck, getting by somehow, counting pennies. I think there are those among you who understand me. I could not, like some of my friends, go out and spontaneously buy myself new clothes or sneakers. I had to calculate my budget in advance that I wouldn't starve. My mother told me every day to be patient, that better times were ahead of us and that we would still make it. But the longer time passed, the more I believed the opposite, and Mom's promise became hollow. I hated to tell her this, but I stopped believing. There was no hope left for us, so all I had left was my dreams. Dreams of winning the lottery or finding a rich father. By the way, I did not know who he was. My mother did not like to raise the subject, so it became a taboo. One day, while my mother was working in a cafe, I went out on the street to hand out flyers. I clumsily tripped and stepped on a man's foot. It was a rich man in a dog suit. "Oh, excuse me, sir, I'm sorry," I said to him, and he stood there like a pillar and was silent. I started picking up the flyers that had fallen out of my hands from the ground, and suddenly he leaned over and started helping me. "Oh, no need. Thank you, I'll do it. You must be in a hurry to get somewhere." He looked me in the eye, and then he was like, "Glory?" I was surprised. My name is Gloria, but the only one who called me Glory was my mother and no one else. I stopped and asked him who he was. Tears ran down his cheeks. "I'm your dad." Everything in my life divided into before and after. He helped me gather the flyers and immediately took me to lunch at a nearby restaurant. I learned from our conversation that my dad is a very cool businessman, but what exactly he does, I wasn't interested in. My dad bought me so much expensive food that I thought I was dreaming. Turns out my mom was against his presence in our family, so he betrayed her as a woman, which she regrets to this day. "But your mother was always special and terribly proud. She still hasn't forgiven me. Here I am, I went away, I came to this town a couple of days ago, and fate itself bumped me into my daughter. All these years, I was looking for a connection with you, but your mother didn't want me to hear anything about you. She wouldn't even accept my money. I beg you very much, my sweetheart, don't tell her anything, or I can't bear it if you disappear from my life again," my father said, and handed me a wad of money. I was surprised, and he said it was just for small expenses. Dad showed me old pictures of Mom on his phone. She hadn't changed a bit. We had lunch, and I went home. We exchanged phone numbers, and I promised to keep our communication a secret. As soon as my dad left, I walked, clutching a thick envelope in my hands. I counted the amount and screamed, "Yahoo! At last, it's all mine! I can finally buy myself something!" The first thing I bought was a new phone. A bunch of things, cosmetics, shoes. I spent the whole day shopping and hid everything at home so my mother wouldn't see. When my mother would leave me for work, I'd get it all out and put it on, then run home and change before she got back. In front of my mom, I used my old phone, gradually paid off all my house bills, and scattered my debts to the neighbors. I'm not stupid. I would leave amounts at the door with a note that this money was in debt in someone else's name. When my mother found out about it, I just said I wasn't aware of it. "Maybe we got a secret benefactor?" I asked, and Mom just shrugged. Meanwhile, my father and I saw each other regularly, 4 times a week, and he pampered me by showing me his gorgeous house. "I wish I lived here," I said at the sight of the mansion, and Dad offered for me to move in. "But I can't," I answered sadly, for if my mother found out, she would be furious. Dad said he would wait as long as I wanted, and then gave me much more money. In the evening, I came home, hid my money under the bed in a drawer, and went out into the kitchen. Mom was acting a little weird. I asked what was wrong, and she suddenly pulled out my things, bags, shoes, and clothes. She started viciously questioning where I got them. "Did you do something illegal? Have you got somebody? How old? Is someone sponsoring you?" she asked. "What do you take me for?" I snapped at her. "Then where did you get all this?" she shouted. So I confessed and told her that Dad had found me and that we were in touch. My mother changed her face, threw a tantrum, and demanded that I give him all this back and stop communicating with him. I told her that she had no right to deprive me of a better life, that she was selfish with a lot of pride in someone who doesn't think about her daughter. Anyway, that's how we fought. I packed my things and went to my father's house in the end. He took me in happily. I wasn't in touch with my mother. I was sad, but still, I thought I was right. My father comforted me and took me to beautiful places, to stores. He didn't deny me anything. He said I could walk all over the house and go into every room except his office. But after a couple of weeks, I, like anyone else would, became curious. What was so forbidden in his office? I picked the lock, something I'd learned when I was a kid because it often got jammed in our house, and I found so many weapons in my father's office. Knives, swords, guns. It gave me the creeps after that. "Well, I asked," he said from behind me. I screamed in surprise. I apologized many times, but Dad was out of line. He took me into the office and told me that I'd made a big mistake. Dad started getting closer and closer, and I was already backing up to the wall and bumping into it. I don't know what he wanted to do, but I was saved by someone's cry for help. The sound came from under his desk. Dad got distracted and told me to run out of there. He stayed in his office. I ran out of there and locked myself in my room, then jumped out the window to my mom. I told her all about the incident, and my mother cried. "I couldn't tell you about him. Your daddy is a thug. When I was pregnant with you, I found out about his dirty dealings. I packed my bags and ran away, but he figured me out. I begged his forgiveness and swore I wouldn't tell anyone, including you, in exchange for him letting me go. And he did, and I signed the contract. All I did was for him to leave you and me alone," she said. After a while, my father returned. He opened the door to the house abruptly and saw me. I was sitting on the floor, staring at one spot, and my breathless mother was lying next to me. The knife and my hands were all bloody. Daddy came up to me and started smiling. "You did everything right. Don't worry, I'll help. Nothing will happen to you or me. Come with me," Dad said and took me away from there. It was all without further ado. Daddy took me to his office, and he pointed to the girl. "I stole her. She's a businessman's daughter. If he doesn't give me the money, you'll do to her what you did to Mom, okay? Then we'll work together, and I'll give you 10 times the money I gave you," he said. I agreed. 30 minutes later, he called that man and he asked for more time, and Dad said he would send him a package with one body part of his daughter, and he hung up. He gave me a knife and pointed in the direction of the girl. She was crying, begging to be let out. She was tied up. I approached her with a cold stare. My bloody hands smelled. She was afraid, looking at me and begging with her hands that I didn't do it. I looked at her bound mouth and cut off her handkerchief. She spoke, begging me for mercy. I turned to my father. "Mercy? My father doesn't know that. He's been killing and stealing people, children and women, for years. He won't get anything for it, will he, Daddy?" Dad was smiling, sitting contentedly in his chair. I gripped the handle of the knife tighter and turned sharply and threw it at him. I missed. The knife hit the back of the chair. Daddy ducked, and I grabbed the girl's arm, cutting the ropes from her arms and legs beforehand. We ran toward the exit. Daddy managed to grab me by my shirt. That's when the cops rang out. "You're still coming with me. You killed your mother," he yelled, and out of the crowd came my mother. "Hi, Alex. My daughter didn't kill me. We played a trick on you," she said, and he was arrested. While I got him away from my mom so he wouldn't hurt her, my mom had time to call the cops and come to his house. So my gangster father got arrested, and everything was left behind.
Hi there, my name is Eliza. I had a huge shock not so long ago, and it made me really nervous. It's all about my sister, or rather the fact that my parents deprived me and left me with nothing. This is so unfair. I think you understand me, because many of my friends also do not get along very well with their brothers and sisters, but I have a slightly different case, because we are not related. Well, in general, now I will tell you everything in more detail. While you watch, do not forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and be sure to write your opinion under the video. I'll read them all. As I said, I have a sister, and she is my half-sister. How did this happen? I was born the only child in the family. We have never been very poor. On the contrary, I always got everything I wanted. My parents spared no expense on me, but in return, they both worked hard and spent almost no time with me. At first, I was worried about this, but then I got used to it and even found advantages in the fact that they were not around. They bought me everything. No birthday or Christmas passed without me getting gifts. When I grew up, the amount of expenses increased. And so, on the last recent holiday, they gave me the car that I asked for. Yes, I was very happy. We were going to get together after Christmas and celebrate the holiday properly. Our maid prepared the food, I dressed up and waited for my parents for dinner. The doorbell rang in the house. I ran to open it in joy and saw a girl I didn't know. She was a little older than me, and she looked cocky and overconfident. I didn't like the look of her, so I asked her what she wanted, and she came into the house, sat down at the table, took off her gloves, and introduced herself. "My name is Ariana. I'm your sister," she said. These words sounded like a threat, and I thought it was some kind of stupid joke. It can't be, because I was the only one in the family. I told her to get the hell out of there to avoid trouble with the police, and then she said she wasn't going anywhere, that her father would come and explain everything. Then the doorbell rang and my parents came in. They reacted to Ariana as if they had known her for a long time. I realized that I was about to have a long, unpleasant conversation. My father kissed us, my mother sat down next to me, and they told me that Ariana would now live with us because she was my half-sister. Her mother recently died due to illness, so now she will live with us because she is my father's daughter. I gave my mother a surprised look, and she looked as if she'd accepted the news long ago and wasn't even the least bit embarrassed. I was so angry. What kind of right does she have to just barge into my house and pump my license? Ariana began to eat and then said that now she would choose a room for herself, and she moved in next to me. The staff brought her suitcases, and I realized that this is really not a prank, that this is real. My spirits sank at once. I asked my father how it happened, and he said that he used to be married, that my mother is his second marriage, and she knew about it perfectly well. In short, only I did not know. As soon as I imagined that I would now have to see her face every day, I felt sick. But it turned out that the worst was yet to come. Somehow a week passed, we kept bumping into each other in the bathroom. She spent hours making up, washing, and it bothered me. In general, I tried to pretend that she wasn't there. She didn't want to talk to me either. Ariana would kind of accidentally push me. I always did stuff in return. She came to my school and tried to get all the attention. She wagged her tail in front of all our boys at school, pretended to be pretty in front of the teachers and my friends. They even doubted at some point that she was so bad, as I said. She managed to be the best in her class, but not in mine. I didn't let her. A second week passed, then a month. I shared this news with my friends, and they just sympathized. Well, after Christmas, my father gathered us all together again for dinner, and there was another conversation to be had. I was sitting in a bad mood and sarcastically asked, "Is there another child behind the door?" My father obliquely looked at me and then told me that now in their business with Mother, there are big difficulties and risk, and it would be necessary to temporarily transfer part of the property to someone. And I assumed it would be to me because I was the rightful heir. "We will transfer your fortune to Ariana and then return it back," he said, adding that these were necessary measures. What? You want to leave me with nothing? I was indignant, and a sly smile spread on Ariana's face. My parents immediately tried to calm me down, but I didn't even want to listen. You see, Ariana is already of age. She has no loans, no debts, and she has almost nothing to do with our family. It still didn't calm me down. Can't my parents see how mean and cunning she is? How can they trust her that much? But Mom and Dad wouldn't even listen. The very next day, a lawyer came to us and they gave my entire fortune to her. I was ready to explode. And Ariana was even more smug. I said through my teeth that I wouldn't let them take everything away from me. So she whispered, "I've already taken everything," and then went to her room. She then took the keys to my car and said that it was hers now too. My father didn't even want to hear about conflicts. He insisted that we should be friends with each other. But I didn't need such a nasty sister. And what do you think happened next? After a couple of weeks, we had strange purchases in the house. She ordered new furniture, sold my car, and bought another one. Ariana did not deny herself anything. But why did I see everything and my parents didn't? In the end, I asked for help from a lawyer, hired him for the rest of my money, and he said that everything was legal and that nothing could be done. Now Ariana is the official owner of everything that was mine. I cried nonstop. My mother just said it was temporary, but I didn't believe them. And while Ariana spent my money, I did not understand how I would continue to live. And then a letter came to us. I saw it first. It was addressed to Ariana. It turned out to be from a lady. I opened it and found out that her mother was actually alive, that she moved to live in a neighboring city and is waiting for her daughter. Can you imagine? They decided to pull off such a scam. I immediately took the letter to my father at work. Dad saw it, read it, and said nothing but, "Go home." I came home outraged and upset, ready to kill my sister. In the evening, some people came to us. They signed something, discussed it, and Dad said that their capital was empty. And then they left, taking something in an envelope. It seemed to me that my whole world had collapsed. I sat down in the room and stupidly sobbed. I was now basically homeless. Then Ariana, Dad, and Mom came into my room. They started to calm me down, and Ariana said, "Calm down. Can I take my fee now?" she asked. My father handed her the same envelope as the other people, and she signed it and kissed me. "Don't worry, they'll explain everything to you," she said, and left. In general, it turned out that she was a hired actress who was supposed to play my father's daughter for the tax service. In general, I didn't quite understand this business, but she left my inheritance to me and left. Business improved, the case turned out well. I almost went crazy from such a circus. Well, what wouldn't you do for business, right?